Well, there's a new sheriff in town over there at the CDC. Does that mean we're only days away from a new no-sell order? Let's talk about it. Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back to the Cruise News Show. I'm your host Tony, here with the latest cruise news updates. And before we get into the cruise news, and I know I'm not supposed to do this, I'm just supposed to ignore it, but I got a little bone to pick with some commenters. I'll save it till the end, but I just want to apologize on the front end, right? I'll ask, what do you say? You're supposed to ask forgiveness? I'm just going to ask for forgiveness up front. Okay. And the second thing before we get into the news is just a quick reminder that whenever we talk about the CDC, we're only talking about cruises that originate from the United States or involve a U.S. port. The CDC only has jurisdiction over U.S. ports, has nothing to do with global cruising. So whenever you hear CDC, think of U.S. cruises. Sometimes that gets lost in translation. CDC, U.S. cruises doesn't affect anything else. Okay, now on to the news. Well, the big news is, Robert Redfield's out. You know, Robert Redfield, head of the CDC from 2018 through just 3 days ago. He's the guy whose signature was on the original no-sell order back in March. He's the guy whose signature is on the framework for conditional sailing that came early November 2020. This is the guy that many people have hung their hate on as the reason why sailing isn't happening. Now, I'm not in that camp. I believe that Robert Redfield just trying to do his job in a hard time. And I got no beef against him, but he's been replaced. And now we have a new director of the CDC, Rochelle Walensky. The big question is, will Rochelle put a new no-sell order in place? I've heard it mentioned many times, predicted. Quick spoiler alert, I just don't think that's going to happen, and let me give you a couple reasons why. The biggest reason is there's no need to reinstate the no-sell order. The framework for conditional sailing is a hopped-up, super fancy no-sell order. On a ship-by-ship basis, the CDC can say, yes, you can sail, or no, you cannot sail. The CDC still holds all the control when it comes to cruise ship sailings, and in this framework for conditional sailing, there is regulation into the cruise industry that's never been there before. They're able to dictate the health and safety protocols on the cruise ship. And this wasn't the case prior to the pandemic. This wasn't the case prior to 2021. The relationship prior to 2021 between the CDC and the cruise lines, a good relationship. The cruise lines voluntarily being a part of the vessel sanitation program, where they allowed the CDC to come on board and inspect their cruise ships and give them a cruise score. We covered that many times. And so there is a relationship there between the CDC and the cruise lines, but that relationship hasn't been very, intrusive. It hasn't been the CDC reaching into how the cruise lines do their business. And this framework for conditional sailing, very intrusive. It dictates many things that the cruise lines have to do so that they can operate their cruise ships here in the United States. And if you study the history of government regulating business, you'll find that more often than not, that once the government gets in, they're very slow to get out. So doing away with the framework for conditional sailing and replacing it with another blanket no-sell order, it just wouldn't make sense to me. Like, why would you do that? Why would you take something that you already have in place, which is super restrictive, and just replace it with something that's less restrictive? It seems like undoing work. I don't think they would do that. As much as I'd like to see them undo that restrictive work, I don't see why they would if they want to continue to have control over when sailing happens from the United States. To me, another huge reason why there won't be a new no-sell order is it doesn't seem like the cruise lines are ready to sail. Now, is that because the conditional framework is so restrictive? It's too hard. There's too many hoops to jump through. Of course, the pandemic rages on. Is it too hard to get crew members over to cruise ships? Is there too many variables already stacked up against the cruise line to get cruising going again? To me, a new no-sell order would have to be in reaction to something like, oh no, the cruise lines are ready to sail and we don't think they should. Let's put in a new no-sell order. Well, that's not the case. It doesn't seem like the cruise lines are even close. So, I mean, why go through the effort of making a new no-sell order when there's no indication that sailing is going to happen anytime soon? The cruise lines themselves voluntarily keep pushing out the date for the restart of cruising. Why would you put a no-sell order in place here in January when the cruise lines, they say they're not even going to try to cruise until May? And they may say again that May's not even soon enough. Who thinks that we're cruising in May? If we don't think that we're cruising in May, certainly the CDC doesn't think we're going to cruise in May. So why go through the process of writing out a new order that's going to be less restrictive and less intrusive and take away their power? Why do that when there's no imminent threat of cruising? Not that cruising is a threat, but there's no imminent chance of cruising. So if you're thinking that the only way that the CDC is going to be a roadblock to the cruise lines is if they implement a new no-sell order, well, newsflash, they're already a roadblock to the cruise lines. The cruise lines cannot get through this framework, apparently. And another real quick one, and I won't spend a lot of time on it, a big reason I think the CDC is not going to put in a new no-sell order is at the time that they wrote the framework for conditional sailing, they covered it in the document. They said, hey, maybe we should just put a new no-sell in place. And even in their own documentation, they went, no, this framework is better because it gives us more control over how cruising happens. So the CDC almost self-affirming that this framework for no-sell is better than just a regular no-sell order. But to look at it from both sides, and to be fair, I could see a new no-sell order if you wanted to eclipse the expiration date of the framework for conditional sailing. The framework for conditional sailing went into place on November the 1st of 2020, and it expires October the 31st, 2021. So it's a full year. The framework encompasses a full year. If the CDC feels like the signals are there to say that once we get to November, the country's still not going to be in a place where travel is going to be viable, where cruise travel is going to be viable. If they have those kind of signals now, maybe they do want to write a no-sell order that extends into 2022, covers all of 2021. I could see that happening, but I think we're too early in the game for those signals to be in place to know what the profile of the virus, the profile of the nation's response to the virus is going to look like in November. With all those things at play, I really don't think that a new no-sell order is imminent. I don't think you're going to see it in the next few days. I don't see it as some sort of flex to show that the CDC has power over the cruise industry, because guess what? They already got that flex. They flexed it all last year, and they continue to flex it with the framework for conditional sailing. So yeah, I don't think that a new no-sell order is imminent. And I mentioned it before, I do have a little bit of a bone to pick. You know, I read all the comments, and in the comments, I saw several times yesterday that the cruise news is that there's going to be no cruises in 2021. End of story, period, paragraph. Put that in your pipe and smoke it. Anybody that thinks anything else is a lunatic. You got to do better with these assertions. You got to do better with these pronouncements. There is already cruising in 2021. So maybe the point that you're trying to make is like there's going to be no cruising out of the United States in 2021. Maybe say something like that, but just this blanket no cruising in 2021 is really, it's just not factual. And, I believe this. If you want somebody to be persuaded to your opinion, you have to be as factual as possible. And so when you say stuff that just on the initial reading isn't factual, you're not winning anybody over. That, I don't know if you're wanting coaching for your arguments, but that's my coaching. Cruising is happening right now in Asia. Okay, in Singapore, it's happening. So you can't say that there's no cruising in 2021. So if you want to be dismissive of the rest of the globe, cruising is a global business. The same people that are probably saying this are the same people that are going, that cruise companies are not U.S. companies. That's right. So you have to take into consideration all the business that these non-American businesses do. So look. I've given this too much time, but I'm just saying, if you want to be persuasive, be factual. It's an interesting concept in these days. All right. The question for the comments is this. Do you think that a new no-sell order is imminent? Do you think because we got a new CDC sheriff in town that she's going to be cracking skulls and putting out the no-sell order or not? And why? Let's continue the conversation. Leave a comment below. Thank you so much for stopping by. This is Tony with Lido Loca. Please show your support by hitting the like button. And until the next time, we'll see you on the Lido. Bye.